How's it going, everybody? We are here today to check out the cooler deck list that I've come up with here for the new cooler from set 18, 17, 17, set 17. Yeah, that's where we're at. Anyway, this leader revolves around unison cards, which is fantastic. We got a little taste of it with the yellow Goku leader when they announced that, and then they came out with the green cooler leader, which, in my opinion, is better. This is going to be a hand control list, hand control, hand destruction list, just like almost every green deck now. It's really all green has going for it. You could do an aggro build of this, could be actually pretty decent, but I'm sticking with the hand control version. If you can see from our list here, we play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different unisons, 4, 8, 12, 16, 18, 21 unisons total. Can this clog up our hand and not help us? Yes. Can it also be beneficial to some extent? Yes. Now, let's take a look at what all of them do. The first unison we want to start the game off with is Demigra. Our turn 1 charge, tap an energy, play Demigra, +1, go up to 15k. Now, you have options. You can sit. If you're going first, you're just going to sit. You're going to +1 and you're going to pass. Your opponent's going to swing into you probably once or twice. You'll take the life because we awaken at 4, and then we'll move on. It'll be great. So, Demigra, +1. We will use our -3 when we need to remove something with barrier. That's 3 or less. The main card for this is going to be Yellow Trunks, but it's a very situational play. So Demigra is here in case we need him. He's the best starter we have for the deck because he doesn't have the Empower skill or any skills on play. He's just a 15k beat stick. So our next unisons all have Empower. Empower is a skill that when you play the unison out, they will get up to the number of markers on their card for Empower from the previous unison that was on board. This is important because it allows them to proc their abilities. Our leader on the front side, when we swing with them, we can take a life and play out a unison or draw a card. A 1-cost unison or draw a card. So that matters because it allows us to cycle unisons or draw cards depending on where we see fit for the game. If we awaken at 4 life, we untap 1, we draw 1. On the back side, we have the same effect. We can, when we swing, draw 1 card or play a unison with a specified cost of 1 with 1 marker on it. And those unisons typically have Empower, which allows us to proc our abilities. Second part of the skill is that Activate Battle, we can discard a unison from our hand and give our leader 5k, or I think it's give the battle card 5k, which is actually huge because it means all the unisons are not dead cards in our hand, and our leader can benefit from it. The next part of our leader skill is that once per turn, when a unison is placed from the unison area into the drop area, we get to draw a card. So that's on our turn, that's on our opponent's turn. So each time that we play a unison from our hand on our turn to replace one, we are actually cycling cards. So we're putting one down, we're drawing a card, getting another attack on board, or getting another effect on board. Most of the time we're doing both, but it allows us to continue to cycle cards and never really lose value until we have to start playing multiple out on a turn or something crazy. So looking at all of our unisons with their Empower skills. First one in the deck is at a 2. We're not really swinging with this card. He's just in here for his ability. Limit 1, so we can only play 1 anyway. If this card has 3 or more markers on it, when this card is played, your opponent chooses 1 card in their hand and discards it. So for 1 energy, we can force our opponent to discard a card, and this cannot be responded to. The second card we play, Empower 3. While this card has 3 or less markers, it can't attack. It's not very relevant. It will probably always have 3 markers whenever we're playing it out because of the Empower skill. +1 gets 10k, making it a 20k swing for the turn. And then limit 1. If this card has 3 or more markers on it, your opponent discards a card. So it's the same as Whis, allowing us to play 6 unisons that discard cards, while one of them can actually swing. The other one is just kind of a, we play it and then we get rid of it. When we do play out the Whis to remove our first unison, we will end up drawing a card off of it, which is really good on the back side. On the front side, we do not draw, so we have to keep that in mind. We don't want to lose too many cards in our hand by forcing our opponent to discard. It does kind of even out the playing field that, we lose a card to play something, they lose a card because we played something. but it's not beneficial in the long run. We want to keep cycling once we awaken, so self-awakeners do help, or our opponent attacking into us does help. If we're playing the long game against an opponent, we're going to have a small hand size until we're able to get to turn 4 and self-awaken. Our next unison is Salza. Salza is really, really awesome. He has a counter play, so when your opponent plays a battle card, we can tap 1 energy and play Salza out with 1 marker, or empower 2, putting him up to 3 markers. When he hits that 3 marker point, he can KO an opponent's battle card that costs 7 or less. That makes it really strong because that's the same effect we have from Charismatic Villain. We'll get to that card here in a second. His +1 is gains plus 5,000, making him a 15k, allowing us to swing with him as well, which is really great. Speaking of Charismatic, we'll just go to that card next. If you don't know what this does, if you have a unison out with 2 or more markers, you can free play this card in response to your opponent playing a battle card or a unison card, and KO one of your opponent's battle cards that cost 7 or less. After you use this, however, you cannot play counter play skills for the turn, meaning if we use this first and then use Salza, it doesn't work. We have to use Salza first and then Frieza, and we'll be able to pop 2 of our opponent's battle cards on their turn for 1 energy, which is really strong. Our last small 1-cost unison is going to be Nez, however you want to pronounce that. This card is actually really, really powerful, even though he's only got 4,000 power. We're not using him to swing with unless it's really early in the game. So he is a counter attack. So we can counter play with Salza and then counter attack with Nez. His thing says if he has 3 or more markers on him when he's played, you can choose one of your opponent's battle cards and it can't attack again until the end of your opponent's next turn. Which doesn't seem that great, ideally, because you're just locking it down from one turn to the next, and a lot of cards now kind of cycle, so it isn't that strong until you think of the concept of your opponent tapping out and you tap 1 energy for Nez, stopping your opponent's battle card swing and preventing it from attacking ever again for the next entire turn as well. So it can just sit on the board. You don't have to do anything about it. Nez is just that strong for 1 energy. Now that can also be on your turn, where you can play Nez out for 1, make it say, hey, that card can't swing, and then you're protected for your entire opponent's next turn, which is also really great. Then our last unison, we played a 3 because we don't want to see it too often. We won't be able to play it out easy like all the other ones. It's a dual attack blocker and power 4, and counter attack. This card can be played on your opponent's turn. Play this card and it gets 3 markers. This can't be responded to by your opponent's skills, which makes it really strong. You do have to keep 3 energy open, which, honestly, in this deck we're trying to get rid of our opponent's hand size. We're not really going to have energy open unless we're playing defensively. Auto, if this card has 4 markers on it, which if you have a unison on board when you play it, it will have 4 markers on it, most likely. Yeah, it just will, because you're tapping 3 for it, so you're going to end up putting 4 markers on it. If this card has 4 more markers on it, when this card is played, choose all of your opponent's battle cards and KO them. They don't have to be in rest mode. They don't have to be a certain cost. Just KO them. It's very, very powerful. Activate main. This card gets plus 10,000, making it 30k. And Triple Strike. Also, at the end of the turn, switch to active mode. So you get a 30k dual attacker for 3 energy, basically. Because we can swing with our leader first, play out a free unison, and then just empower off that. We do want to keep this card on board as much as possible, because the dual attack is very strong, as well as the blocker capability when you restand for your turn. So this card is really good. It does definitely deserve the SR rarity. We have 3 Dormants, standard in every green deck, 3 to 4. Prevent your opponent from swinging by discarding a card. Free play if you have a unison out, which we will have a unison out. Our super combo we're playing is Vegeta. Vegeta, when you play it out into the field, your opponent discards a card from their hand. If you have 4 or less life and you combo it from the field or your hand, you draw a card. So this can be a double value card for us for 1 energy. Our opponent discards a card, we draw a card on the swing. I do like it a lot, more than kind of the other draw super combos that we have. I think it has a lot more value to it in this deck. Our Fuse Zamasu. When we play out our Charismatic Villain, it's kind of just stuck there. It's a 10k body until our opponent removes it. If they know they're playing against green, and they know you're playing hand destruction, they're probably going to try and remove it because it is a threat after turn 3, which is why we have Fuse Zamasu. You take the Frieza, and for 1 energy, you place in the drop area, play out Zamasu. It cannot be removed by skills or battle, and every time that it attacks, your opponent has to discard a card from their hand. This card will stick on board against basically any deck except red. Kind of stinks. Red is going to be pretty prevalent in the upcoming meta, and 20k is not that hard to get rid of when you minus its power. So Zamasu sticking on the board would be amazing, and nets a lot of value in every matchup except for red. If you can get 1 swing off with it, great, but after that it's probably going to be removed. We have our Overwhelm card. It's the only free Overwhelm card kind of left in the format that has value to it. Overwhelm 6, critical and double strike. If used at the right time, this card can be extremely impactful, but for our deck, it's sort of a, it's not super relevant. Most of the time, it's just going to be negated, but it's pretty, we can play it at any point after turn 4 because we're going to be cycling so many cards. We play Majin Buu, Unadulterated Malice. This card is for 2 energy, a Floodgate negate. Negates the first attack. If your opponent wants to swing after that, they have to discard 2 cards from their hand. The whole point of our deck is to get our opponent to discard their hand. So this is a really impactful card as long as it can stick on the board when it's played. Homicidal Clones. Basically the negates that everybody plays because they are super strong. If we get down to 5 life and we know that we want to start proccing our leader ability, we can use this, take a life, go down to 4, and play out a free blocker, which can be really, really strong, as well as protecting us from other cards like Son Goku the Dragon Fist. Yeah, it's a good combo card. Cooler Sibling Cruelty. This card is brand new. I was really hoping it was going to get an SPR. The SPR is probably going to look really cool with the giant fist being all hollow, but this is what we got now with the sample image. It's a double striker, and for every unison in our drop area, we reduce the energy of this card in our hand by 1. So if we get 3 unisons in our drop, which is possible by turn 2, when this card's played, we have a double striker on board for 1 energy. And then we can take a unison from our drop area with a specified 3 or less, which is all of them in the deck, and bottom deck it. And if we do, our opponent discards a card. So just like our super combo, we are playing for 1 energy a high value card that is not necessarily easily avoidable or removed. So having a 20k double striker forces our opponent to use cards out of their hand to get it off the board, or else we have a double striker all the time. And we can play these 1 turn after another, which is really great. This card I'm probably going to cut from the list. I was looking at it. It kind of netted value with the crit swing, but not a lot. For the same 1 energy to play it out, I would rather have a Cell's Earth Destroying that would allow me to randomly discard a card from my opponent's hand. So there's a little less luck factor in it, I guess, that they pitch a card that they might need later. Instead, it's random, and I could hit their secret rare or something really good out of their hand. For the same 1 energy to play this card out, I could use that Cell's Earth Destroying defensively to not take damage and force a discard, or use it offensively to force damage and force a discard. So I feel like Cell has a little more value. This guy's effect, though, if you use an extra card from your hand, then you can tap 1 and play him. You can only play 1 per turn, but for 1 energy, you're getting out a 2-cost card with 15 crit. So it is a little relevant, and that's why I put it in here. I also did for this second card, because I thought it was kind of impactful. So you can only play 1 of these Cooler's Armored Squadron once per turn. You look at the top 7 cards of your deck. You choose a Unison with cost of 1, or a 2-drop Cooler, which is the one we just talked about with crit, and you play it. And I thought that was pretty good, because if you play the Cooler out normally, your opponent might respond to it with a counterplay that could be impactful to the game. So if you use Cooler's Armored Squadron and you go for a Unison, that's forcing them to use their counterplay during window 1 without actually knowing what's coming out. If they use a counter, you just use your a Unison that you find, and if they don't use a counter, then you can play the Cooler out if you happen to see it. The odds when you're playing 4 on the list, and a whole bunch of unisons, you're most likely going to hit something. So I thought that this was a good little combo inclusion, but I'm probably just going to cut them off for sell. And then I'll also thin the deck list out a little bit. I think it's at 55 right now, so I'll put it down to 50? Yeah. No. Cut 6, 49, 53. So not really better, just cut 2 cards overall, but still, it seemed like a better inclusion. Our last extra card is Focus Breakthrough. This isn't super relevant in the list until we get later into the game. You have to be at 4 or less life, and then you can free play it as well by taking a life instead. There's not too many things that come down for 3 that are going to be impacted by this. However, if we are able to prevent our opponent from dropping another Yellow Trunks on us, or Videl counterplay, those are somewhat relevant. Some Piccolo cards possibly, but the card's not great. It's at a 1 in case you see it. Not super impactful. Can stop a Pan, I guess. A secret rare Pan. If you plan on attacking with Zamasu or Cooler that turn, or Men on a Mission. But it's okay. It's not fantastic. Our secret rare in the deck is Invader's Vow. If your leader card is green or a Frieza Clan card, this card is brand new. And it's meant to go with that Cooler deck, I guess, or other green decks that have some kind of hand destruction aspect to it. For 1 energy, activate battle. Your opponent discards 2 cards from the hand. So already we're plussing value because we're removing 2 for 1, which our whole deck is basically a 1-for-1 trade-off. So this is really nice. And then, using it offensively or defensively, you can KO one of your opponent's battle cards, up to the number of Unisons or Frieza Clan cards in all open areas. So if your opponent has a Unison in the drop, that counts towards this. If they have a Frieza Clan card in the drop, that counts. All your stuff basically counts for this. Almost everything in our deck is going to count for this. So the number adds up really fast. Our Man on a Mission, even if we were to use it, doesn't impact this card. It counts the warp as well. However, Man on a Mission will affect our Cooler plays because we'll end up warping our Unisons from the drop area. So until we get 3 more, this guy won't be reduced to 1, and he won't be as impactful in the game. So keep that in mind when you go to Overrealm. Outside of that, this card is basically always going to be live, and it's really strong. It's really strong. Your opponent does have to have 3 or more energy, so if they don't get to that point, if they decide they're going to play at 2 for some reason, you can't use a card, which kind of sucks, but your opponent is also limiting themselves on what they can do during the game, so that's okay. But yeah, that is the entire list. Give it a shot. I think it's actually pretty good. This change right here, if you change these to Earth Destroyings, I think it'll be better. But I want to get the cards in person and test out the list for real. It does sound like it's really fun. So going down here, I have a bunch of cards in the side deck. It's not the side deck for the list. These are kind of cards just to watch out for that are going to be impactful in the upcoming meta. Most of these can be responded to with something in the deck, which is really awesome. But the archetypes specifically have stuff going for them. I think these are going to be all the different meta archetypes that we're going to see coming up. You will see some different things, maybe like Red Brawly, that could pop up that can be pretty aggressive. But having access to double charismatics is also really impactful, especially for that matchup. But so yeah, looking at the sideboard, Red GT Goku. Our best response to this deck is going to be our Unison Nez. Any of these cards that can swing multiple times, we negate with Nez, and we just lock it down for the turn. And then our opponent is forced to put it back under their Unison, like this card right here. Or if they're using the Super Saiyan 4 Goku Secret Rare, they can't do anything with it. They're just done for the turn. So I think that's pretty impactful, that we can just for 1 energy, 1 card, end the turn, which is great. The rest of the deck is just going to do a lot of cycling. So if we can push out cards like Demigra and Frieza that can just swing into the Unison and break it real fast off the board, then they have to dig for another Unison before they can awaken and extend, and we can just sit there and continue to remove cards out of their hand, which is great. Shin Shenron's a little scary. Once we get deeper into the game, we'll hopefully rip quite a bit of cards out of our opponent's hand, and from that point we can finish it with Frieza, because Frieza will remove their entire board of all their blockers, and then we'll just double triple strike swing, hopefully for game. If not, we definitely have to get there before turn 6, or else they have access to cards that can really shut us down. Majin Buu will become really important because of the negate, and then forcing them to pitch cards, as well as probably our secret here, because most of their stuff does not have barrier. They might be only getting off like one swing. The whole Piccolo archetype, if they can get into these two cards, these become impactful because they both have barrier and they're both above our 3-cost threshold, which makes it really hard to remove them. There are cards in the sideboard that we can put in for this, such as Preemptive Strike, that for 2 energy we can prevent it from being played in the first place, but these are played off skills, so they will have to be in counter window 1, and we'll be taking a gamble. We can also pop the smaller Piccolo stuff before it gets into the cards that can go into these, but once these hit the board, they do become difficult to remove, and that does create a small issue for our deck. We have Jiren. Jiren is in all the U7 decks and probably going to be seen in every red deck moving forward. This combined with the 3-cost free play Videl counterplay is really strong for negging. It can neg up to 30,000 off of anything that comes into play without barrier, and that is really impactful in the game. So this Jiren will, as soon as it hits the board, make it so every Frieza that we play down will get neg 10,000, meaning that we cannot go into Zamasu in the first place. It can also reduce our Unisons down, which will reduce a marker from them right off the bat. So they'll get their Empower skill, and then Jiren will trigger, and they'll lose a marker. This impacts us going into like our Frieza, but they also can just choose not to use it and wait for the perfect time to try and use it. So removing this card off the board becomes pretty hard. We can get up to turn 4 and play out. There's a Vegeta SR that will remove 3 markers from our opponent's Unison. That card seems pretty good. We'll only get 1 triple strike swing out of it, but you know, it's alright. That's okay. It's actually pretty strong. It's worth sideboarding maybe in this matchup if you think you need to. The next 3 are all part of the Cell Ultimate deck. These are the hardest cards to respond to because they all have barrier or just out of our range of being able to do anything with them. If our opponent goes into Cell, he has barrier, so we can't respond to him. Once they get to the 8-drop, that's higher than our threshold for our Frieza and our Salza, meaning that we have to go into our Frieza Unison in order to clear the 8-drop off the board, which is okay because the rest of the game we're going to be playing out just trying to discard our opponent's hand, forcing them to maybe run out of androids to play out, and that's good. That's kind of our game plan against Cell. Once we get to turn 5, we do have to worry about Perfect Force. If he comes into play, we'll discard down to 3 cards, but we can then also counter it with Knees. Yeah, no, with Salza or Charismatic. If they go into Celzino, we'll lose 3 cards out of our hand, but then we can counter with Knees as well. So there are back and forth. Your opponent is going to have to choose to make that tough decision on what they want to go into. They'll be down at 5 life as soon as they awaken, making it a little bit easier on our end. We can focus on the hand destruction part and then go for game a little easier when we need to with like Man on a Mission and the Double Strike Coolers. So, Yellow Trunks becomes a threat with this guy right here. He's going to tap the first card that we play each turn. That is impactful to an extent. We can play around this with our leader skill, being able to play out a free Unison each turn. Because that Unison will be something where we want it to use Empower, get the skill to discard a card, or to freeze something on board. That makes it really relevant. Trunks can't do anything about that. And from the first one being played, he'll tap it, and from that point forward, we're free to play out the rest of our turn. So after our first swing, if they negate with, let's say, Frieza, they're going to Mecha Frieza negate, right? We can play down our Frieza. It'll get tapped by Trunks. Yeah, because autos resolve, negate with the Mecha, counter timing, we play Charismatic, and then our leader ability would resolve. So Trunks would tap down the Charismatic, and then we could also tap 1 energy and go into Zamasu off that, and they'll be active. So there's a lot of ways to play around the Trunks. It's not the worst card in the world, but we do have the Demigra in the deck to pop something in the Trunks if needed. Power of Super Saiyan forces us to kind of time out our swings. If we need to swing with our Unison first to get off the 15k swing before it gets rested, then we do have to play around Power of Super Saiyan. It's limited to 1. It's only going to happen once. It's not super impactful, but it is there. So if you're going for game or something, just keep that in mind that they can tap down your Unison, like your 3-drop Frieza. Then we have Imposing Presence. This card does net a problem for us. It can be played for free once our opponent gets down to 3 life. They will have to discard a card in their hand, which does benefit us because they're paying 2 basically to discard a card to stop us from swinging for the turn, and we can take advantage of that if we have all of our energy open and just start pounding away with removing their hand. So by turn 4, when this kind of becomes relevant, we can plus off this. But if we're going for game, this does become a relevant card that we have to play around. This guy is going to be popping up here in a little bit with all the green decks kind of coming out into the wet work here with Green Cooler like we're playing. This can be played to prevent our Dormant from going off. They can negate our Dormant when we try and use it for free. And that's relevant because Red can put a lot of pressure on us, and using 1 energy to just stop our Dormant when we're tapped out, that creates problems. Creates a lot of problems because we don't really have combo power. We'd have to be sitting on our super combo, or our leader on the backside. We could maybe pitch some stuff or use homicidal clones, but it does become relevant as a 1 or 2 of for some red decks. And the last card we're kind of worried about would be Ultimate Dragon Slaying Bullet. Our opponent does have to tap an energy for this, so that's relevant to the extent of if we're playing against Black Sin, they have to decide what they're doing before we just start ripping their hand apart, because they don't plus a whole lot of value unless they until they get their Unison out and start kind of drawing cards and blocking. But if they don't do that, then we're forcing them to play around our hand destruction style. They will be milling cards from our deck, but if they're Unisons, that's okay, I guess. It's a tough matchup because we're probably going to have to be a little more aggressive than we want to be. But this guy, when they tap 1 for it on a Unison play, we can either remove 2 markers from it for every card in our drop area, which will essentially get the Unison off the board, or we can only attack once for the turn. And that becomes relevant because if they use this on our Frieza card, we're only going to get 1 swing off with the Frieza, and we basically tapped out for it. Or tap 3, which is pretty relevant because you don't want to go late game against Sin. They will just destroy your deck. Everything will be in the drop area, and it's a little unfortunate, especially with the new TP promo that lets them play out Black Smoke on turn 4. It becomes a problem because they can just start warping your hand and warping your drop, so your deck, I guess. Anyway, that's all the cards that we kind of have to watch out for while we're playing this deck. They're all going to be pretty meta relevant. If you didn't know that already, then I guess stuff to watch out for when you're playing your own deck. But hopefully I kind of explained a little bit of how the deck can counter those, as well as we're just going to apply pressure, like little chip damage. Just 15k swing here, 15, 20, leader swing 15, and just little swings while we're reducing our opponent's hand. And eventually they will have to start taking life to maintain a little bit of hand size. If we can get that by like turn 4, then we can definitely go for game on turn 5 if we're not playing extremely defensive for some reason. If they're being super aggressive and playing out a ton of battle cards, that means that they're committing cards from hand and reducing their hand size down faster. So a lot of these decks, they're going to be cycling, they're going to be playing stuff out, and we just have to be reactive to that and counter it as much as we can. But I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile, the video, the list. However you feel like changing it up, if you do, let me know if you found a better way to play it. I haven't seen anybody post a list out for the deck yet, but I expect it to do pretty well in the upcoming tournaments. We do have PPG's Origins in Ohio and Philly coming up, as well as some online events. So try it out, see if you like it, theorize it, learn how to beat it with your other decks. I don't know, whatever you want to do, wherever you watch the video. But thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.